Okay, hello everyone. I'm Geneva with the Levy Senior Center Foundation. Can I mute this real quick? Okay. And we are happy to welcome today's audience to our Levy lecture, Don't Believe Everything You Read, with Xandi Wright. Xandi Wright is the founder and lead instructor at Right to Learn, a small business focused on teaching digital skills and making online spaces more approachable for everyone. Xandi also works in online education, including helping college professors and other educators use AI to support their students' learning and prepare for the future of their work. This program is made possible by the Levy Senior Center Foundation and the City of Evanston. Please silence all your cell phones and reserve all your questions until the end of the presentation. And at that time, if you have a question, we ask that you raise your hand and wait to be given a microphone so those watching online can hear it too. And I'd like to now turn things over to Xandi.
Great. Thank you, Geneva. And I am a walk and talker, so I'm going to see if I can do this and not disrupt things too much. Okay, there we go. Okay. It's nice to see folks here in the room. I know it is a snowy day outside, and so a lot of folks may be comfy at home as well. So hello to everybody joining us from the internet. So we are here to talk about don't believe everything you read. We know, of course, probably that just because something is in print or is on the internet doesn't mean that it's believable or that we should take it as fact, but we're going to dig into that a little bit more and talk about some of the patterns in how we decide what is or isn't believable, some of why that happens, especially in online spaces. So I always like to start, I should say, this is me and my small business. Hi, hello, I'm Xandi. So I always like to start by hearing from folks in the room. So would love to hear, first of all, for the folks who are here in person, or if you're on the Zoom, if you want to add this in the chat, you're welcome to as well. What information sources do you consider trustworthy? Maybe we'll just start with that one. And I'll say, I'm not here to evaluate whether or not I agree with those information sources being trustworthy or not. We might have some disagreement about what is or isn't trustworthy. And for this discussion, that's totally fine. So the question was, what kind of information are we talking about? Good question. Let's start with news sources. That's not the only kind of information that we care about, but let's start there. So trustworthy sources of news for you. Yeah.
I'm still old-time media, so I read the Trib, I read the New York Times, and I listen to the major networks news. That's where I draw.
Sure. Okay. So we had someone say the Chicago Tribune, the New York Times, the major TV news networks, sort of the larger organizations that are in the business of disseminating news. Yep. What is it about those that makes them feel more trustworthy for you?
My history with them is they seem more balanced. And, I tend to know whether they're a little left or right leaning, but for the most part, I see them as balanced and fair, which makes me think that they're not making things up.
Okay, good. So I heard a couple of things there that I'm going to pull out. One is that you have history with them. You have seen their reporting over time, so you have enough of a sort of a data sample to evaluate. And then also that they seem relatively balanced, that you may have a sense of whether they lean in one direction or another politically, but you see sort of both sides of things being presented in those outlets. Okay, good. What about, and we can expand beyond just news, what are some places where you would expect to find inaccurate information or news? On Google, okay. Potentially, yes. We'll talk a little bit about sort of where, when you just do a Google search, what kind of information are you looking at when you do that? But, okay, but I'm hearing in online spaces for sure. Yes. The Center for Disease Control as a source of inaccurate information. Yes, and there have been some changes in the last few years in some of our political institutions and our scientific institutions in this country in particular that have meant that organizations that you might previously have trusted no longer feel trustworthy, depending on your perspective on those particular organizations. We won't get into a lot of details about those because I do try to keep, I have my own opinions about this, which you'll probably pick up here and there as we're talking. But so yes, there are, we have some examples, right, of organizations that previously were very reliable sources of information that then suddenly get skewed by a change in policy, by a change in leadership. So it is worth noting, right, that even though often what we do is we say, we'll look at, have they historically been a good source of information, that doesn't always mean that everything they're putting out now is a good, like factual. Okay, great. So we've started to kind of fill in some of these strategies already, but I would love to hear from you all and to kind of fill this in as I put my microphone back. Okay, maybe. Yes, good. So tell me about what are some of the strategies that you use to decide, is this information that I'm being presented with reliable or not? Yes.
I try to do that snoops.com. I don't know how accurate that really is. I assume it is.
Yes. Okay. So Snopes.com is a great resource. That's one of the ones that we're going to talk about a little bit later. It is a dedicated fact-checking website. So if you haven't used it before, they have people whose full-time job it is to know how to investigate information claims, see where is that information coming from. Is the source that's being quoted here, is that a real source? Do we have sort of evidence or a paper trail of that? So yes, using Snopes to fact check specific pieces of information can be great. What else? Snopes, yes, SNOPES.com. Here, let me move there we go. Yep, I will say this is a good time for me to give a plug for if you would like a PDF of the slides after today's session. We have a sign-up form for the folks who are here in person that you can request those, or there's also going to be a QR code on the screen that we'll provide for the Zoom folks as well. So I will have Snopes.com in my slides. Okay, what else? How else do you decide I'm being presented with a piece of information? How do I know if it's real? And Geneva, if we have folks chiming in in the Zoom chat and you want to call out any of those, we can. It's funny how this seems like a very simple question, but it's sort of hard to answer when you start to get into it, right? Fact check, yes. Okay, so and we said some websites, so like Snopes, for example, if it's a kind of information that Snopes doesn't necessarily cover, like let's say we just had Thanksgiving, your cousin told you about this new health benefit of eating grass. If you eat grass, it is good for your liver. And your cousin has picked up this habit of eating grass all the time, and they're very convinced. How would you go about evaluating that claim? You might try Snopes. Yes, we could go on Snopes and see if they have any coverage of this. I will say fact-checking websites tend to have good coverage of things that have sort of had like a surge in the news or become suddenly very popular on social media. So if there was like a recent burst of people eating grass for their liver health, Snopes would probably cover it. If this was just your cousin having an interesting idea, probably not going to find it on Snopes. Yeah, what else? Okay.
Or the pharmacist?
Yes. So I heard ask like a nurse or a pharmacist, some kind of a medical professional. I'm going to distill that a couple of things out of that. So one is to ask someone who's a subject matter expert in that area, right? Okay. So, oops. Yes, and this is, I think, a thing that's worth calling out, right, is that, there we go, with the internet, it's easy for anyone to get a hold of, say, medical information or medical claims. That doesn't necessarily mean that all of us are equipped to really evaluate that information, right? So the expertise of someone with a lot of previous experience or previous training in an area is one of the ways that we do this. This is like you would ask a plumber for advice about plumbing for your house. You would probably not ask your plumber for medical advice, right? So we value specific areas of expertise. Okay, what else? Yes.
For things about
Yes, good. So I heard sometimes go to the Mayo Clinic online, especially for things about medical information, that is another example of a trusted source for that specific type of information. Good. Oops, let's see if I can type one-handed. Okay, great. All right, I will throw in maybe one other thing, and then we'll continue with the discussion. So another sort of a bias that's inherent in how we experience the world is that if we find a piece of information in multiple places or we hear it from multiple sources, right, we tend to assume that, like, if I've only heard it from my cousin that one time at Thanksgiving and I've never heard that anywhere else, there's probably no reason to believe that's true. But if I can go online and I can find, an article in the New York Times or an article in maybe even a newspaper that I've never heard of, but at least some kind of an article verifying it, then I might be more inclined to believe it. If I see a post about it or multiple posts from lots of different people all saying that this is true, this is where this gets tricky, right? We tend to believe that, well, lots of people appear to believe it, so it's probably true. Which is a perfectly reasonable mental shortcut for us to use most of the time, right? Like, we can't personally verify every single piece of information we come across, so we use sort of a crowdsourcing, do other people appear to believe this strategy? And of course, then that becomes problematic if other people have also been duped into believing a thing that may not actually be true. But we do tend to believe that there's sort of safety in numbers. This shows up even in things like the scientific method, right? We want scientific studies to be able to produce results and then other scientists to be able to replicate those results, right? Get the same findings multiple times. All right. Okay, so we're going to define some terms together, but I would love to just hear briefly these, or maybe actually in terms of the discussion, I'll just sort of preview. These are some of the terms that we're going to be talking about, and I'll ask you for your definitions as we go through. So thinking about clickbait and fake news, this one was sort of all the rage for a while a few years ago. I haven't heard it as much recently. Misinformation, bias, echo chamber, and deep fake. So these are some sort of terms in this world of what's believable and what's not. So let's start with the idea of clickbait. You've probably seen these articles that start with things like, expert swears by this one weird trick to cut your blood sugar or save your liver, whatever it is. So this is what we call clickbait. Clickbait is basically a sensationalized headline or a preview that's designed to make you want to click on a news story to learn more. Why does this exist? Why doesn't it just say what the weird trick is in the headline? Yes. Yeah, someone said there's a revenue stream. Yes, that in some way, by having people click on that article or interact with that article in some way, they are benefiting. And we're going to talk in a minute about sort of what those revenue streams are. But yes, so we're going to sort of follow the money that goes with these kinds of headlines. But you've seen these, right? It's this one weird trick, or the shocking truth behind this, or you won't believe what she looks like now, or all of that sort of genre of internet content. So this phrase, cui bono, who benefits? This is a Latin phrase that just means, like, whatever this thing is that we're investigating, who is it who benefits from this thing? So when you say there's a revenue stream, especially for online spaces, digital ads in the United States alone were a $258 billion industry last year, billion with a B. So there is a ton of money in putting ads on the internet and getting people to look at them. That's not counting, like, that's revenue from just the ads, not trying to include, like, how much money was actually spent on the objects in the ads, right? That's just the ads themselves. So businesses buy ads on a web page or on Google or on social media, hoping that you will then click through and buy something, right? Because that's how they make their money. Other websites that are not that business and not necessarily even the original place where you saw the ad, then they make money by selling ads. So there's often almost like a shell game or like an onion of like the business that is selling the product, the company that they go through that places the ad on different websites, potentially other contractors in the middle that are providing the placements, and then the actual website where you encounter it. There's multiple different places where money is changing hands just for this one thing, right? Which is hopefully your eyeballs getting on their ad with the goal of having you maybe click on that ad and actually buy something right there in that moment. But even if you don't click on an ad right then, let's think of an example. If I get an ad for a McDonald's hamburger while I'm sitting in front of my computer, right? I actually can't, I don't think. I guess these days with like Grubhub, I could technically get a McDonald's hamburger delivered to my house, but that's probably not really what they're after, right? What they want, though, is for me to see their content often enough that then the next time I am hungry, that's who I think of, right? So even if you're not actually going and clicking on the ad right away and generating income for them right then, there is an income stream that's happening out of this because they're sort of getting additional eyes on their product. The reason that this impacts how we consume news is that even major media news outlets, even things like the New York Times or the Tribune or fill in news outlet here, they don't go quite all the way into the clickbait territory of like one weird trick to save your blood sugar, but they do write headlines specifically to spark your curiosity, right? They don't put all of the information in the headline because they want you to actually go and read the story. So this understanding sort of how the attention economy works and how businesses are competing for your eyeballs and your attention on their information is a big part of a lot of this sort of misinformation spread. Okay, we're going to do a very quick little activity here. So I'm actually going to come up. There we go. All right, so we are going to clickbait this article. So this is an article from Healthline, which is a pretty reputable source of medical information. I can make this a little bit bigger, I think. But, oops. There we go. But so the headline is the main thing that we want to pay attention to here. So it says, high quality carbohydrates linked to healthy aging, longevity in women. This, I would say, for me, this is not a particularly clickbaity headline, right? It's interesting. I want to know more about, like, when we say high quality carbohydrates, what does that mean? But it's not doing the sort of sensationalized version of this news. And that's Healthline, as I said, is a pretty reputable source for medical kinds of information. If you were going to turn that headline into a clickbait headline, one that is designed to sensationalize, one that is designed to make people go, oh my goodness, and maybe share it or at least click through and read the whole article, what might you say instead?
Maybe specific, like aging to 105 and losing weight, something.
Sure. Yes. So the suggestion was maybe amping up the claims a little bit. So, living to 105 and losing weight, right? We could get more outrageous with the claims. I would say that's totally possible. A direction also that I often see is that they get more vague, but more compelling with the claims, right? So eat carbs to live longer, right? Would be a nice sort of clickbaity version of this headline, right? We've lost high quality carbohydrates. We've lost linked to healthy aging, which is sort of a more nuanced claim. We've lost like a lot of the nuance in that title. Yes.
Let's see if this works. Okay, we have someone online saying remove words, high quality.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Right. We've got in this relatively nuanced scientific reporting on this article, we have these qualifiers like high quality, being linked to healthy aging, but not necessarily claiming that it's causing healthy aging. So when we see stories like this show up in news media, often what we see is that nuance has been removed. So I'm going to compare this briefly. This is the actual journal article itself. You'll notice the title is just Dietary Carbohydrate Intake, Carbohydrate Quality, and Healthy Aging in Women. Are we compelled? Do we want to click? No, not really, right? The journal headlines, which are written as research reports, are not written to compel people to click. They're written just to tell, in this case, medical professionals what they're looking at. But when I did a little Google search to find articles covering this same story, we've got kind of a good variety of different approaches. There we go. So we've got, this one's relatively balanced-ish. Women who eat the right carbs in midlife are more likely to age in good health versus in healthy aging, carb quality counts. Versus this one, I love, scientists just discovered the best diet for women as they age, and it involves a certain type of carb, right? This is now where we're getting a little more into the clickbaitiness, right? Of like, what's the question that you're left with that you have to read the article to find out the answer? Yeah, what type of carb, right? Are we talking about chocolate cake, or are we talking about our favorite, whole wheat bread that everybody says that we should be eating? So, right, all of this, we're starting to get a sense of the ways that perfectly factual information from a journal's study, right, from like a very reliable source, can be just slightly spun or presented in a slightly different way in order to try to get you to be more engaged, more curious, in some cases more alarmed, or maybe more hopeful, right? So the ways that this information gets presented is really, really important for how we consume it. All right, let's continue. Okay, so earlier we said that fake news is another one of the topics that we're going to get into. When we say that phrase fake news, what does that mean to you? Not real. Okay, good. Meaning like things that never actually happened, or sometimes, yes. Okay, so sometimes things that are in the news but that in fact didn't happen at all. I would say that's possible, but probably one of the least common forms that it can take. What else do we mean when we say fake news? Yeah.
Talk about whatever the article or the thing is in the news, but they like a politician would answer the question.
Yes. Okay. So the comment was that they talk about the facts that come up in the news, but then they spin it, or they add a bias in the same way that a politician might spin or add bias when you ask them a question. Yes. Okay. Good. So those are good examples. I will say in the sort of the media literacy world, or the sort of understanding how people consume news world, fake news is sort of not the preferred term. There are two terms that we tend to use instead. So the first one is disinformation. So disinformation is fabricated or deliberately misleading information that's presented as legitimate news. The dis part of this is that this is created with the intent to mislead someone else. I'm going to contrast that with misinformation, which is just false or inaccurate information. So if I told you that Thanksgiving dinner starts at 2 p.m., and actually it starts at 3 p.m., probably that's just misinformation on my part, right? I just gave you, I was incorrect. I was not trying to sabotage anybody. I just had the wrong information, right? This is where this gets a little bit blurry, is that things can be created as intentional disinformation, right? Created with the intent to mislead, but then spread through no bad intent of the people spreading it, right? We spread things because we assume that they are true. So the line between those things can get a little bit blurry. Yes, you had a comment.
Well, when I hear the term fake news, I also think about things that are accurate that someone just calls it fake news, so that some percentage of us don't believe in it.
Yes. So the comment was that sometimes when things get called fake news, what somebody actually means is that they don't agree with it or don't believe it, right? It's not actually a carefully researched evaluation of how reliable that information is. It's trying to discredit that piece of information. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Well, someone online added an example, which was the orange man yelling at reporters on the White House lawn.
Yes, that one. So yeah, that is, I would say, the sort of the origin of this phrase fake news, right? Particularly came up with Donald Trump's first presidential campaign in like 2015, 2016. And this became a tool to sort of to immediately discredit anything that's negative, that's portraying you in a negative light or portraying other people in a positive light that you don't want. So sometimes when we say fake news, or when other people say fake news, what we really mean is just information that we disagree with that we're trying to discredit, right? That's why the phrase fake news is not sort of, it's not an official term in this world because it can be so slippery and subjective. Yeah. Is that
It's just so hard not to think. Mm-hmm. I really basically nobody else uses that phrase, but I've heard it so many times by that particular person.
Yes. So the comment was that, particularly this phrase fake news, that we hear this all the time in politics and specifically from Donald Trump as sort of the person who made this phrase very, very visible 10-ish years ago. So yes, I think that's absolutely worth calling out. And also not the only way that misinformation and disinformation shows up in our lives. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to briefly talk about, there's a resource that has kind of called out 7 different types of misinformation and disinformation. I know this is a little bit small. I'll call out the highlights. So we have sort of a spectrum here where on this end we have satire or parody where there's no intention to cause harm, but it has the potential to fool. Has anybody ever accidentally shared a satire article, like something from The Onion, and then realized after you shared it that it was not supposed to be taken as true? I have. It's been a while, but I totally have. Right? So sometimes when we get these absolutely unbelievable headlines that we have this big reaction to, and then we click through and we realize, oh, this was supposed to be funny. This was meant to be a joke. I was not actually supposed to believe that was true, right? But that is still a form of misinformation when people interpret that as fact when it's not meant to be. All the way on the other end in terms of sort of like levels of yuckiness. That's not a technical term, but so we have fully fabricated content. So completely new content, 100% false, designed to deceive and to do harm, right? So this is creating an entirely new AI-generated video of a famous person doing something extreme that never actually happened and putting that out into the world as if it's true. This does happen, but this is a lot less common, right? Much more of the more common things that we see are the things that kind of fall in the middle. So even AI-generated content, very often it's actually just manipulated content. It's taking an actual video of a real person talking and just redubbing the audio and making their mouth move to look like it matches, right? Or things like false context. This one happens a lot with photos that accompany news stories, but the photo is not actually of the thing that the story is talking about. Or it's a photo that's presented out of context, or it's been cropped to make it look like it's presenting something other than what's actually happening, right? So there are lots of ways that information can sort of become distorted or turn into manipulated presentations of information or of fact, not just completely creating brand new things out of whole cloth. Okay, so this is where I really like to get into the psychology of this. So first of all, in general, why would someone spread inaccurate information? Let's actually start with misinformation, right? So like if I told you that Thanksgiving dinner was at 2 p.m. and it was actually at 3, how does that happen?
You might actually believe that.
Yeah, probably. I just believe that, right? I misheard, or it was at 2 p.m. and then it got moved to 3, but nobody told me, right? So through honest mistakes, simple factual errors, right? And then repeating information or rumor without checking it first. This is a really big one, especially in online spaces, right? Where we click that share button and we spread information without having necessarily done all of our homework. Yeah, was that a comment? So there is also the option of intentionally, I wonder if that's disinformation. If you intentionally tell someone that it starts an hour earlier than it does so so they show up on time. Okay, yes, right. So there are lots of innocent reasons that we inadvertently share incorrect information. This second bullet is one that I really want to highlight, which is that sometimes, right, we share things because we believe them to be true, and we just haven't done our homework, right? We haven't done the due diligence to check it before we proceed. What about the disinformation? Why would somebody share intentionally misleading information? Because they're cruel. Yes, possible. Yes, the hidden agenda, I would say, is probably the more common reason, right? That they stand to benefit from it in some way. I think, yes. So I have this here as that they are wanting to, for some reason, manipulate others' behavior or beliefs, right? I want people to buy my product, so I'm going to spread information about what it allegedly does that's not true. Or I want people to even, right, this is where we come back to clickbait. I want people to, click on articles on my website so that I earn more money through ads on my website. So I'm going to sensationalize or spice up the headlines a little bit more so that people are more likely to click. Yeah. Yes.
I see a lot of disinformation, not intentionally done by news sources, and it's because they got rid of all the good reporters. They got rid of so many different services that one service could be wrong and everybody's using it. It spreads all over.
Yes. So the comment was that sometimes news media outlets will unintentionally spread misinformation through. This is probably sort of a combination of these two bullets here, right? It's factual error or repeating information without having fact checked it, and that happens in particular in places where maybe we used to have a whole team of reporters and fact checkers and people whose job it was to do this kind of research, and we may not have those people still working at that organization. Yeah. Yes.
Someone provided an example online, like circulating flyers that give the wrong date for an election as to keep them from voting.
Yes, that's an excellent example of, again, trying to manipulate others' behavior or beliefs. In that case, if people have the wrong date, right? This is the less silly version of telling someone the wrong time for Thanksgiving, right? If people have the wrong date for an election and they don't show up on the correct date and vote, that is manipulating people's behavior, trying to get a particular outcome. Yes. Yeah.
That goes to back to the other misinformation, where they used to, like before an election, they'll say this people need children or
Yes. Yeah.
vote for them.
Yeah, so the comment was, right, some of the very sensational claims about particular groups or particular political candidates even, these people do this insane thing that, we can't believe and you can't trust them for that reason, right? So sort of spreading or disinformation about a group or a person in order to make them appear less credible, make them less likely to win an election, that kind of thing. Yes.
Everybody's like shocked and they spread it to everyone else, and then it becomes a reality in their mind.
Yes, and that brings us back to this one, right? That people, so the comment was that people are shocked when they hear that, can you believe that left-handed people eat babies for breakfast? And, that information gets spread because people are shocked and horrified, not because it's true. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. There are a couple of other reasons besides just, having something to gain from spreading misinformation or disinformation. So this is partly having something to gain, but making money from increased clicks and shares. There's, in addition to the platforms themselves, the Facebooks and the X's and the Instagrams of the world, there are also, right, influencers and people who get paid for having a significant following on their social media accounts or who get paid from ad revenue. And so those people are incentivized to get more people to follow them and to pay attention to what they have to say. And then lastly, this one's an interesting one that comes up in some of the research, that there are people who will sometimes intentionally share misinformation just for the purpose of feeling sort of smug, right? That I have tricked a bunch of people and look at how smart I am and look at how not smart they are, which is kind of yucky, in my opinion. But is sometimes part of this psychology. And so for me, one of the things that I take away from that is like that makes it that gives me a good incentive to do my homework, right? Because I don't want that person sort of like pulling one over on me. I want to make sure that I am doing my due diligence, even if somebody else is trying to trick me. All right, so now we get to what makes us fall for inaccurate information. And I'm going to put the microphone back on the stand so I can type and talk at the same time. But so tell me about what is it that makes us more likely to believe something, even though it's not true?
Sometimes you actually want that
Yes.
fits with what you want.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I would say that's really the number one thing. So the comment was, if you want it to be true, or I'm actually going to sort of separate these out as two things. Either you want it to be true, or it fits with what you already believe about the world, good or bad. Yes, let me capture both of those. Yeah, and that second one, the research shows this is the number one thing that regardless of what kinds of facts or evidence are presented, regardless of who's presenting the information, that we are more inclined to believe things that fit into our existing worldview and reject things that contradict or conflict with our existing worldview. And again, to some extent, right, this is what's called an adaptive behavior. This is just like how we make sense of the world. If you went around immediately assuming that every contradictory piece of information was true and everything that corroborated your existing view was false, you would be changing your mind 10,000 times a day, right? You could not function. So to some extent, this is like a way that our brains process information in order to just keep making sense of the world. And also, right, it becomes problematic when it means that we are sort of allergic to points of view that we might not agree with. Yeah. What else? What else makes us more likely to believe inaccurate information?
Maybe it's presented really convincing.
Sure. Yeah. Yes. So information that is presented in a very convincing way, presented apparently by experts or by a person who we think we should trust. Yes.
Like RFK and autism and vaccines, like that. He's supposed to be an expert because of his position in the government.
Yes. So, for example, right, people like RFK Jr. was the example, but he's not the only one, right? Information presented by someone who is in a position of authority who we believe, well, this person is in charge of big, important stuff, so they must know what they're talking about, right? Yes, and we do that too. There's a very interesting set of research around how people respond differently to information that is said to them by a person wearing a white lab coat. Whether or not that person has made any claim to be a doctor, we just are more inclined to believe something if the person telling us it is wearing a white lab coat. Very strange. But also, right, makes sense, right? We've been taught that those people are experts, that we should trust what they have to say. So yes, we have to be sort of on our guard for that, that sort of like expert or false expert bias. Yeah.
I see that sets off an alarm.
Yeah. So the comment was that when you see, a person in a lab coat presenting information, that sets off an alarm, sort of the other direction of this might be a trick. I might be being manipulated here. I would say, especially in like media and advertisements, that's often a really good sort of radar to have. Yeah. Yes.
I don't know if you remember, but during the major part of COVID, there was a young man online that was saying a whole bunch of crazy stuff. He was young, in his 20s, and he wore a lab coat. Everybody thought he was a doctor. Nobody even knew him. And they would say, oh, this so-and-so said this. It was the craziest thing.
Yeah. So the example was that there was, do you remember the name of the person?
Do you remember that? Anybody? Some young guy. I mean, he wasn't a baby. He was in his 20s, but he had some really crazy, there were so many things going around in those days. But probably that's not real.
Right.
It's more like it's not a real thing. You can't get it. I mean, it was something like, nobody's really been sick. It's all false advertisement. But he had a lab coat on and it was just going around like crazy.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So the example was during COVID, an example of probably like a social media influencer or someone on the internet making claims about, this isn't real, nobody's actually sick, and wearing a lab coat. And, people assumed that this person was a doctor when in fact, we had no reason to actually think that. We just jumped to that conclusion. Yeah. So when things are presented by a trustworthy source or by an apparently trustworthy source, that's a big reason. I'll add to that a slightly nuanced version. When it's presented by what's a member of what's called an in-group, meaning if it's presented by a member of a group that I also am in, right? So let's see, if there's an interview with someone who's an Evanston resident and it says, Evanston resident so-and-so says that such and such happened, even though logically we know that just because the person saying this is from my town, that doesn't mean that it's more likely to be true. Our logical front brains can know that, but the part of our brain that is wired for community and connection does tend to believe, oh, someone on my team said it, right? Somebody who I feel aligned with or somehow connected to said it, therefore it must be true. We see this a lot with political parties, right? The person, I vote this particular way, somebody from that political party said this, so I assume that it's true. Somebody from the other side of the aisle said something else, I assume that that's false, right? And the actual data may or may not bear that out, but that is one of the shortcuts that we use to try to figure out what is or isn't trustworthy. Yes.
We have someone online who said if you hear something often enough, you believe it's true.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, that's one of the other things that research shows, that if you are presented with the same piece of information multiple times, you tend to be more likely to believe it. This is partly what happens when we see like articles going viral on social media, right? Is that, well, I've seen it from 4 different friends of mine. And so all 4 of those people wouldn't share it if it was wrong, would they? But all 4 of those people might share it believing that it's right and not having actually done their homework. Yes?
Or maybe something like, we've all heard we're supposed to drink 8 glasses of water a day. And that, probably heard it our entire lives, and so those people are not doing it. But apparently when somebody looked into the research, there's nothing to back that up at all. It just started and it just kept going.
Yes. So I love this example. The example was the idea that you're supposed to drink 8 glasses of water a day, and that we've all heard that so many times that we just assume that, 8 glasses of water, that's right. And it turns out, right, that when they went back to do the fact checking, to trace the sources of that claim, there wasn't, a study that said, we did comparisons of 5 glasses and 6 glasses and 8 glasses and 12 glasses, and we found that 8 is the right amount. There wasn't even really any particular science behind it. It just sort of became accepted in a way that people stopped questioning. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So this is a little bit of a summary. I think we've covered most of these, which is great. We're doing a good job sort of intuiting what the research actually tells us. So we said number 1 is that we're more likely to believe when it confirms our existing beliefs, right? Something that just aligns with what we already think. And the tricky thing here is that it doesn't even necessarily show up as I'm presented with this information, I ask myself whether or not to believe it, and I decide yes, right? More often this happens in the format of we're absorbing information passively without even thinking about whether or not we should question it. It just doesn't set off any kind of alarm bells at all. We also, as we said, are more likely to believe information coming from typically credible or in-group sources that we identify with. We didn't talk about this one, but we are also more likely to believe something that appeals to strong emotions, especially fear or outrage. Why would that be? Why would we be more likely to believe in that case? It's sort of weird when you think about it, right? You'd think that we would be more likely to believe the boring things and not the scary things. This is a really interesting one because basically, especially the fear and outrage one, we are as organisms, right? Not just humans, but like as animals living in the world, we are wired to try to keep ourselves safe, right? My goal is to not end the game too soon. So when I encounter things that feel scary or possibly dangerous or possibly like, there's a threat from some other group or some other person, we are wired to pay more attention to that information because, right, if I ignore dangerous information in favor of like boring everyday information, I'm more likely to get hurt, right? So this is like a very baked in human way, not just human, but a way that we process information in general. You might have heard the phrase, if it bleeds, it leads. In relation to news coverage. This is probably 100-year-old expression about putting things like crimes and especially grisly crimes and bloody things on the front page of the newspaper. Not because those things happen every day, but because they don't happen every day and because they get sensationalized and we pay more attention to them for that reason. The other thing that happens with strong emotions, especially fear and outrage, is that it tends to sort of kick us over into action mode rather than critical thinking mode, right? This is the same reason that scams, right? You get the text message that says that you have $10,000 in outstanding taxes and someone's coming to your house to collect it now. They are designed to push you into fear and reactivity rather than using your critical thinking skills. Yes.
Yeah, we have someone online commenting on that, saying it taps into fight or flight response.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Tapping into that fight or flight response, getting people to just react rather than pause and process and really evaluate the information. Yep. This is sort of related, but on the other side, and maybe connected to what we said about when it's something that we want to believe, we're more likely to believe when something gives us a sense of hope, especially if we otherwise feel helpless. This is a big part of why a lot of so-called medical information about secret cures for diseases tends to sort of get legs and to spread, is because people really want there to be a secret cure for this terrifying disease, because that would be much better than the real possibility that we actually don't really have any good options, right? And then, yes, we did talk about this one when we encounter the same information multiple times. That also, again, over time makes us more likely to just assume, well, it wouldn't be out there in the world so much if it weren't true, right? This one, I almost forgot. This one's one of the very important ones. Very interesting research that when we think we can't be fooled, when we have done our sort of I took that class at the senior center and I am now very good at fact checking, and so I cannot possibly be fooled. That is when we stop actually doing the work of fact checking, right? We just assume that we are immune, and that's when we're actually more likely to get gotten, right? So one takeaway from this is, right, go home feeling hopefully more confident about your fact-checking abilities, and also recognizing that everybody gets fooled sometimes. Okay, I mentioned I would share a couple of fact-checking resources. Snopes, which came up earlier, Snopes.com is one of them. A couple of others that I do recommend are PolitiFact and RumorGuard. Let's actually look at Snopes briefly together since that one came up. All right. So let's see. I'm going to steer us into a less political story, although yes, most of the fact-checking stories on these articles these days are political. But let's look at 20 bizarre AI-generated stories about animals. So, this was a fun one. I've seen this one several times. Has anybody seen videos going around of animals jumping on trampolines? AI. It's AI. Yeah. Sorry. I know, right? We want it to be true. It would be so fun to be a crowd of 3 raccoons jumping on somebody's trampoline. That would be great. But yes, that is AI generated. So are all of these. So we've got some good examples in here of, here's apparently a wolf protecting piglets from a mountain lion. And a man rescuing a bear cub from a tree trunk, and a bear breaking into the Bass Pro Shops. And right, so lots of the stories that are not necessarily being created with the intent to advance a political point of view or do anything sort of directly insidious, but the desire to create content that lots of people will look at, that lots of people will click on and share, potentially for revenue reasons, or maybe just to feel sort of proud of yourself for having made a thing that people fell for. Yeah. So I'll show just one quick example. The reason that I like these fact-checking websites, because a question that comes up in these sessions a lot is, well, who fact-checks the fact-checkers? How do we know that those people are correct? Which is a good question, a good one to be asking. The thing that I like about these sites is that they provide receipts, which is millennial speak for they show their work. They show you the evidence and the sort of the paper trail that they followed. So they'll, this one that has an example of a lion protecting piglets. They include sort of the link to here's the original Facebook story. Here's kind of the context in which it was shared. And then here's how we did our fact checking. We searched these sources. We found that there was no media outlet source for these. And let's see, the Facebook post in question this paragraph is good for us to pay attention to. On this Facebook, this post was posted by a person who on their profile has this phrase, story, an account of imaginary or real people and events told for entertainment, right? So this is somebody on the internet who's just putting content out there to entertain, possibly to confuse, but without the intent to claim that this is actually real. We will, by the way, take a look at some examples of AI-generated content in just a minute, because that's also been sort of a hot topic. But okay, so point being, websites like Snopes, like the other ones here, so PolitiFact and RumorGuard, they will take those stories and typically give them sort of a rating of all the way to false, all the way to true, or somewhere in the middle of that was taken out of context, or that's partially true but not completely true. And they'll sort of go into the evidence and the research that they've done so that you can kind of follow that paper trail yourself. Okay, what about, we spoke about this a little bit earlier when we talked about the idea of quote, fake news just being news that we disagree with. So information that is true but slanted. This is where we like to talk about bias. So in general, bias is just an inclination or a prejudice toward or against someone or something. Every human being has biases, right? People like to say, well, I'm not biased. You are. We all are. Every single person, right? Because we have our own lived experiences, we have our own belief systems, we have our own favorite brand of ketchup, which is our favorite brand, not because we've tried all of them, but just because that's the one we know, right? So we all have bias. The trick is, what do we do with and about that bias, and how aware of it are we? So where we get into trouble is when we get into our next term, which I'm going to actually ask you about before I put the definition up. When I talk about an echo chamber, does anybody know what that means, an echo chamber?
I think it means sort of in information enclosed space where everybody basically agrees.
Yes. So the answer was, it's when you're in an information enclosed space where everybody agrees. That's exactly right. Yes. So an echo chamber happens when we are mostly or only exposed to ideas that reflect our existing biases, right? When we only talk to people who believe that eating grass is good for your liver, then we just all assume that everybody knows that eating grass is good for your liver because everyone around us believes that too, right? I'm going to show you a video in a minute that gives you a little bit of a sense of how this actually happens online. But this is one of the big things about how social media works and how it makes its money, is that those platforms know that people are more likely to click on, more likely to reshare, and engage with posts or articles or things that they already agree with. So as you use those sites, more and more you start seeing the same kinds of information, the same kinds of content, so that you are getting more and more exposed to, again, things that already align with what you believe. So let's actually watch a quick little video about this. And I think there we go.
The the algorithm shows you is much more in your control than people think. People act like they're just passengers in the apps. They're like, oh, it makes me too angry, it makes me too sad, I'm seeing too much political stuff today. There are some known biases in the algorithms, but the general vibe of what you see is entirely up to you. All of these apps pick videos for you based on signals you've given them, like likes and dislikes and how long you watch videos. So at some point, you taught this app that you like mid guys who talk fast. And sure, you could be completely genuine with the signals you give the app. You could also do all of those things on purpose to tell the app what you want. For example, I like bunny rabbits, and I decided the other day I would like to see a feed that was just bunny rabbits. So I created a brand new account with a baby fresh algorithm to see how long it would take to make a feed that was just rabbits. So I created my bunny pervert account, and then I lingered on and liked any video of an animal, and the closer that animal seemed to me to be to a rabbit, the longer it got. So dog, yes, cat, more, donkey, less, dog and duck together, more. And stuff that wasn't animals at all, I didn't just swipe away, I swiped away as quickly and as aggressively as I possibly could. It took me about 7 minutes to get my first rabbit video, which I watched through twice, liked, and saved. Went back to swiping, found another rabbit video, did the same thing again. Within 15 minutes, my feed is almost exclusively rabbits. I still like other things besides rabbits, so that's not the only account that I open, but if I'm feeling stressed, I'm just gonna look at the bunnies. It is my emotional support animal algorithm. Here's something you should unlearn. The videos you see on...
It is sort of annoying that you can't like pause and then go back to the beginning. Anyway, it's fine. So yes. So what did we learn about training your algorithm? Or what did you hear in that video that we can sort of like surface and clarify a little bit? If you stop watching the same thing that's upsetting you. Yes. So this is absolutely how that, like the fear or anger response, how we start to then get into more and more of that, right? If you click on and read or comment on articles about upsetting things or about, stressful things happening in the news, you're going to see more and more of that content. Yes. Now, for me, this is me. I'm gonna get on my soapbox for like 30 seconds. I had to sort of break up with getting news from my social media largely for that reason. So I chose instead, what are the places where I am going to consume news, because I didn't want to just completely check out from what's happening in the world, right? So when you choose the places where you do want to consume your news and be intentional about that, and then don't rely on an algorithm like social media to serve up that content for you, because yes, you're going to start getting a very specific slice of the world that is specifically engineered for you to react to. Yeah. Yes.
So one of the questions I have on, say, Facebook is the New York Times. Is the algorithm responding to which of those articles I click on as they go through my feed?
Yes. So the question was, if I follow the New York Times, for example, on Facebook, is the algorithm responding to which of those, which New York Times articles you click on in your feed? Yes. So even if you were getting, 100% of the New York Times articles showing up in your feed, which would be a lot, probably you would ignore some of them and click on or comment on or otherwise engage with others. And then yes, it will start to show you more like that, more similar keywords or more things that other people similar to you have engaged with. Why, by the way, why does Facebook do this? Why not just let you see all the stuff from all the people you follow? Yeah.
It's to make sure you stay on Facebook.
Bingo. Yes. Facebook wants you to stay on Facebook more and spend more time on Facebook. Why do they want that? I'm not giving them any money. It's the ads. Yes, they are earning money from having more people on the site, spending longer on the site, engaging more with the site. They earn that through advertisements. Yep. So the longer you're on, the more they can earn off of your attention, even though you are not the one paying. So there's a phrase that goes around in conversations about this, that if the platform is free, you are the product. Meaning your attention, your being on the platform is the way that somebody is making money, even if it's not actually costing you money. Yep. And for some things, right, we can just decide that that's okay. Bunny videos, worth it to me, right? I am willing for somebody to profit off of my interest in watching bunny videos. But, right, think about how willing are you to sort of be that revenue stream for these other companies, and in what ways does that feel worth it? Maybe I'll give a less silly example. Before my grandma passed away, she got onto Facebook in order to keep in touch with me and her other grandkids, right? And that was a really lovely way for us to connect with her. Right, there are perfectly reasonable human reasons to be on these platforms. This is not my sort of like campaign against social media. This is my campaign for being intentional about how much time you spend and knowing about how the algorithms work and how they try to keep you on the site. Yeah. Okay. Now I want to talk a little bit about deepfakes. So an AI deepfake, if we've heard this term before, this is basically a type of what's called synthetic media, which is sort of a fun term, meaning media that was created artificially, right? So it's created or modified using AI, usually appearing to show someone doing or saying something that they didn't, right? So deepfakes specifically, not all AI created media is a deepfake. I would say I would not count a video of raccoons bouncing on a trampoline as a deepfake, right? It's not trying to convince you that, like, you know, this famous person did something outrageous in real life. It is a realistic looking video of a thing that didn't actually happen, but that doesn't necessarily put it into sort of worrying deepfake category. But we are going to watch, and again, a short little video about. Let's see if I can.
Today, one of the biggest technology conventions starts in. So an example of a deepfake is when you take a video that's been recorded on a phone and you can do a face swap.
Scam artists have always been around, but what's different now, according to Accenture security expert Daniel Kenzior, is how easy it is to make a good fake video or audio clip.
What's really changed is you always had an ability to create some of these images, but the speed and the relative low resources to do it is very different now.
That's why Accenture created some examples to help you spot bogus videos. Experts took this video of a woman.
First room is done in the first house I've ever owned.
Then used her face in other video. Here, Kenzior walks us through a few of them.
The complexion on the face and the neck are a bit different, so that stands out. The size of the face on the face swap can tend to be a little bit off as well.
Because of artificial intelligence, or AI, Kenzior says it's very easy to make videos like this. Here's another.
So in this example, you see ultimately kind of the clarity of the background and the face are very different. That's because the image on the face is at a higher resolution when it was face swapped, so it kind of sticks out.
Kenzior says it's easier to spot if you slow down or freeze the video.
So in this example, and this is a frequent one, there's potentially a video that's gone viral of someone doing something that's creating a commotion. And in this one, the face has been applied to it. But you see this whole line? This is because the face has been applied on top of the hat.
But as the technology gets better, deep fakes will be harder to spot. So Kenzior says there's one thing that should raise a red flag.
The threat actor is trying to create a sense of urgency. So if you feel like someone is trying to make you do something quickly, use that as a gut instinct of, I really need to slow down and double check. When you get
Kenzior says obviously it's easier to spot a deepfake as well if you know the person in the video and can see differences in how they normally speak or move. But Jim and Marie, this is a very frightening development in technology.
All right. So before we talk about spotting AI, I want to just check in the room and online as well. So have you encountered AI created videos of like pretending to be of real people or things that you saw that you were like, that has to be AI? Yes. Yes, and then yes.
It's not fair. I've been to two different classes where they talked about fake AI, and then they showed us a bunch, and then we were supposed to pick them. So I mean, I learned from that, but also it's like, how much knowledge do you need to do to pick this? Because like what you have, raccoons on the trampoline? Yeah, I know the bunny ones. Wrong amount of heads and stuff. But they tell me, look at they're doing better though. See, everything you're watching, they taught me a year ago, is almost going to be taken care of now.
Yes. Yes. So the comment was, have seen AI created content and have learned a little bit of what to look for. But also as the technology gets better over time, looking at the feet, the thing that people have said for a while is like count how many fingers there are. And if it's the wrong number of fingers, then that's how you know. the technology keeps getting better, right? So I would say if you count how many fingers there are and it's the wrong number of fingers, or the arm is in a weird angle or something that's not possible, that can tell you that something probably is AI. The lack of those things does not tell you that it is not AI, right? There is not a level of fidelity that you can say like, well, I have looked closely enough at this to be certain 100% that it's real, because the tools keep getting better. Yeah, you had something as well.
I was going to say in our class, we asked staying connected and becoming more skilled and confident. In the AR class, she showed us the picture of the bunny. And she said, what's wrong with it? And we didn't see anything wrong with it. And the key was, she said, now I'm going to slow it down. And when she slowed it, this one bunny had two sets of ears, one on the back and one on the front. I mean, we didn't even see it when we played. So, I mean, the key is, like you're saying, slow it down. But it's scary, first of all, and you have to figure out, like you're saying, get skilled at learning how to slow it down.
Yes.
And make sure it's
Yes. And so the comment was, again, having taken other classes and being shown examples and shown, well, when you slow the frame down enough, then you can see, the bunny has two sets of ears, or, the hat disappears and reappears for no reason, or, whatever it is. And so the comment was that it's sort of scary because, like how skilled do you have to be in order to detect this stuff? And I would say, I think it's important for all of us to know what's possible with AI and with creating AI images and AI videos. It's not, to me, necessarily important for all of us to be able to personally detect whether it is or isn't AI 100% of the time. Because there's a whole job description of people whose job it is to do forensic analysis of images and videos to be able to tell if they've been tampered with or not, right? So this is where resources like Snopes and PolitiFact and some of those fact-checking resources can be really helpful, so that we don't necessarily have to say, well, I have to be the one who can tell if it's AI or not every single time. I will say, though, spotting bad AI is still pretty easy, right? The challenge is spotting good AI. That is what continues to get harder and harder. Yes, you had something as well.
I have the impression that a lot of things are being created from scratch by AI, not transferring faces from one video to another. And even visual artists are doing it. It's really quite stunning, very beautiful things.
Yes.
Those aren't threatening, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. So, and I love this sort of additional perspective, right? That this is not that all AI created images or all AI created videos are bad and scary, because there are some beautiful AI created things that are created as art, as a provocation, as like an invitation to dialogue, not with the intent to mislead. And yes, often, right, those things may be created not by manipulating an existing photo or an existing video, but created sort of out of whole cloth, using an AI generating tool. And yes, the thing that I was saying about, or like that they were talking about with deepfakes, is that often they will start with a real video or a real photo of that person and then modify it because that's easier than creating a fully convincing 100% fake. Yeah.
Is CGI the same as AI? That's one movie like amazing things happen in movies, but they aren't actually live.
Really good question. So the question was, is CGI, which I believe is computer generated images or imaging, is that the same thing as AI? Good question. There's a whole other class we could do on when we say AI, what do we mean by that? So I would say short version, yes, for the purpose of what we're talking about, that's another example of what we might call synthetic media, where they start with filming actors in front of a green screen, or actors, doing something in a studio. And then they use computers to add in the background or to make it look like the building exploded when it didn't, right? So yes, good examples of places where we've seen this tech before. They talked about this in the video too. The thing that has changed is not necessarily, part of what has changed is what the tech can do. A lot more of it is who has access to that technology, right? You don't have to work for a movie studio to be able to make a convincing video using AI these days. Yeah, good question. Yeah, the question was, what is the point? And we talked about that a couple of slides back, but it's, I think, like,
Is it really money? Because, I mean, what do you get out of generating something that's not real or pretending for it to be?
yes. So the question was, what's the point? Are you really getting money out of it? Are you trying to trick people into believing that it's real when it's not? And so, yeah, I would go back to some of the things that we talked about earlier of trying to manipulate people's behavior or manipulate get the algorithm to give you more money because more people are clicking on and sharing your content. Yeah, I would say those are probably the big ones. But then also, yes, making a video that is convincing enough that people believe it, and that then it goes viral because lots of people believe it, and it's become sort of sensational, right? There's this sort of like smug, like self-satisfaction thing that folks can get out of that. Which, to be clear, right, AI did not invent that, right? There have been people creating fake, photographs or other sorts of hoaxes for way, way longer than we have had this technology available. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
One thing that I find concerning is I saw something about, I'm not sure if it was Brad Pitt, but we'll say it was Brad Pitt. He did an article on gut health, and then his own brother was going to buy it, and then he called him and said, "Hey, did you do that article on, was it him, on gut health?" And he said no, and he looked it up, it wasn't even him. So then that leads me to believe, what about like these things where they say, oh, Elvis and Princess Di are going to meet us in Texas and we're going to have a revival, and people believe it. But they can really do AI to look like deceased family members and go to elderly or anybody in grieving and try to get money or try to trick them. It's such a process, to rob people.
Yes. Yeah, so the comment was about the ability to use these tools, maybe not necessarily just for clicks or likes, but to get someone who maybe knows that person to want to, to believe that they're in trouble, or to, send them money, or, even with the example of like, Elvis and Princess Di are going to be in Vegas together, right? So yes, that it's not always about sort of getting more clicks and more likes on Facebook. This can be used for scam things as well. We're seeing this show up particularly around voice cloning. So you get what seems like a phone call from a loved one saying, "Grandma, I'm in Mexico and I lost my wallet and I lost my passport and I can't get home." And this is not our spam and scams class. I can do that one another time. But if you get that phone call from your grandson, allegedly, what do? Hang up and then, right? Call your grandson on his actual phone number, or call, his mom or somebody, right? Somebody who knows where that person is or should be, and like, is Tommy okay? Is he in Mexico right now? Right. And often, right, if you call the actual person, very often these scams include I'm calling from a different number because I lost my phone. I don't have any of my stuff. I'm totally helpless. And you call that person on their actual number and they pick up and say, "Hello." Yeah. So yes, knowing, again, this is where we come back to knowing what's possible with these tools is good protection. And when you're being given information that's designed to make you react without thinking, that should be a red flag. That should be a hold on, let me double check. Yeah. Okay. I heard that some of you at least, have done some classes on spotting AI created images already. So we won't spend a ton of time here, but I will say the Detect Fakes project from Kellogg School of Management is a very cool activity that you can participate in, one, to build your own knowledge, and two, to actually help with their research about what makes people more or less likely to catch an AI-generated image. I do, though, want to briefly talk about, we did talk about that AI image generators are getting better all the time, so it's important to sort of stay aware of that. Do we know how to do an image search? This is a really good skill to have if you don't already. So I'm actually going to focus on this rather than on the looking at AI images to tell if they're AI or not. So let's see. We just had a really big snowstorm in Chicago. This is the Detect Fakes project, but that's not what I wanted. Okay, we just had a really big snowstorm in Chicago, and so maybe one of your friends has posted this photo online, and look how much snow we got. Can you believe this? So I see some people shaking their heads already. Why would you not necessarily believe this if your friend posted it? It's too deep, right? Maybe, I mean, we lived through that storm. We know that it was not, 2 feet deep. It was 8 inches. So partly maybe you have something that's a little bit more like your own experience. I would also point out that the makes of these cars are not modern car makes, right? If we look a little closer. But so here's the skill that I want to show you that's really important. Let's see if I can do. I'm going to put this on the stand for just a moment. Okay. Okay, so I have gone to google.com/images. This is a really good resource for doing a reverse image search. So here's what we're going to do. I could type in keywords to just search for an image of a thing that I want, but instead I'm going to click on this button that says search by image. And so if I have the image saved on my computer, I can drag it or upload it. In this case, I have the URL, the web address where that image lives. Okay, so Google is doing a reverse image search for us. Come back. All right, so according to Google, this image is from the Chicago blizzard of 1967, not the 8 inches of snow that we got the other day, right? And we can get, a bunch of additional information because this is apparently a pretty well-known photo. This has shown up in the Chicago History Museum and in other places. We've got some other examples of other photos of that same event. And let's see if I click on any of the links here in the AI summary, it'll show me here's where that information is coming from. So being able to do a reverse image search or just searching, here's this photo that I found. What can I learn about this is really helpful. I'll show you one other way that we can do this as well. So let's see, snow in Chicago. Oops, that's not how you spell Chicago. All right, so same thing. So I've done a Google search and searched for images specifically. Let's look at this one. This is an interesting looking picture. I can tell because I just did a search and pulled up Google Images, I can see that the source is from the Chicago Tribune, which makes me a little more inclined to trust. But what I want to do is click on the 3 dots here and choose about this image. Okay, so this is what happens when they don't have a lot of previous history or background knowledge of this photo, where it'll say this image may have recently appeared online. And we see they found it on the Chicago Tribune, they found it on Instagram. Those are the places where it has appeared. If this were like a fake photo, like an AI generated photo, we would probably see here are some social media posts where this has shown up. And then here's also the Snopes article or some other article that's sort of debunking this image. So being able to do an image search or look at the about this image information and get more context can be really helpful. The other thing that happens is when it tells you how recent is this image, let me see actually if I can give you a better example than this. Yeah, this is a good one. Okay, so here we have an article that's about when Chicago could see its first snow of the season, which is clearly not a very current article because we already did. Let's see what happens when I investigate this photo specifically. So about this image. According to Google, this image is at least 5 years old. They have examples of this exact image showing up in stories at least 5 years ago. Looks like actually this is from Shutterstock in 2008. Right? So when we talked about the prevalence of misinformation or disinformation where it's just taken out of context, right? You see photos that are attached to a news story or attached to a post, but are not actually from that time or showing the thing that it says that it's about. Yeah. Yes, question.
I'm wondering, how does the Google search differ from ChatGPT?
Good question. So the question was, how is a Google search different from ChatGPT? there's a long answer to that. When you say different from ChatGPT, would you, for instance, like upload, like share a photo with ChatGPT and ask it if it's real or not? Mm-hmm. Yes. So good question. I would say they're probably running fairly similar searches, which is looking for basically like a visual match, like the pixels, the pattern of the pixels is the same between this image and other places where it has appeared on the internet. ChatGPT is not inherently a search engine. It has a search engine capability built onto it, but it does have a little bit more of a tendency to do what's called hallucinating, which is like making up sources or making up information. Google can do that as well, but mostly you're going to see that in the AI summary section, where rather than generating a web page that you can actually go and click on. Yeah. Yes-ish. So the question was, is either Google or ChatGPT considered more legitimate? So Google is designed to connect you to other sources of information. ChatGPT, like I said, is gaining that ability. So now it will often link you out to real sources. But if I would say, if someone said ChatGPT said it, so I assumed it was true, I would have more reservations about that than I Googled it and I found out it was true. Just because when you do the Google process yourself, you have more control over what are the sources, like how deep do you want to go, how much research do you want to do. But I would say that's not a hard and fast rule. Yeah, good question. Okay, I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time at the end for questions. And I'm actually going to skip this video, although it's an excellent video, and I will include the link to it. I think actually you should be able to get the link to it from the slides. What I will say, though, about what's called lateral reading is a thing that we've sort of been talking about throughout the session, which is don't just look at the one source that you got the information from. Go out and look at other sources, right? If it's just this one Facebook post, go and do your own Google search or go and find news sources that are reporting on that information. Often people get sort of stuck in the same kind of thing that we talked about with looking at AI images, which is, let me just look really closely at this image to try to figure out if it's real. And a much more reliable way to fact check things is to go and do outside research in other places, not just staying within that original source. Nope. Okay. So summing it up, what can we do about all of this misinformation? First of all, check yourself, right? How does this information make you feel? Is it playing on your emotions? Is it sort of prompting you to take action unnecessarily? Check the source itself. Where is this information coming from? Is this a source that I consider trustworthy? Why do I consider it trustworthy? Does it have a long history of being trustworthy that I feel like I can depend on? Checking other sources. This is that lateral reading thing and looking for the full context of what might be happening. Checking the bias. We could do, in fact, I have a whole other class about bias in news media, but so looking for, is the whole picture portrayed fairly? I did journalism in high school, and one of the things that you learn, like the first week of high school journalism, is that when you're writing a story, you need to interview multiple different perspectives, right? So if you're writing a story about extending the school year, so it cuts 2 weeks out of summer vacation, you can't just interview students about how they feel about that, right? You have to also talk to the principal or talk to the parents or people who are going to have a competing point of view. If you're only presenting one side, that's not good journalism. And so we can lean on that as information consumers. If I'm only seeing one side presented here, I should be suspicious. All right, check the evidence. Is there logical and verifiable support for the claims? We can't dig deep enough to know that every single thing that's being reported is true of our own knowledge, right? That way, then you go down like a whole rabbit hole of having to fact check every piece of information you come across. But you can look for what's the evidence for this and how well supported is that. I thought I had one more bullet, but I don't. So we have just a couple of minutes, but if there are other questions that folks want to bring up. Yes. Mm-hmm.
This clickbaiting thing, so whenever I see something and I click on it, that generates money for people for that?
Potentially. Yeah, potentially, yes. So the question was about clickbait. So like if I see an article or a headline and I click on it, does just the fact that I clicked on it generate money? Potentially, yes. That's not always how it works. It's not always sort of a one-to-one ratio. But ads get paid for based on views and clicks. And so views includes how many people saw it on a given website, right? Even if you were looking at the news story, but the ad also loaded alongside the news story. Yeah.
Real quick, I was going to go on Google for something else, and then this article said Morgan Freeman had died. And I said, oh my gosh, he didn't die?
Yes, so the question was, had seen an article saying that Morgan Freeman had died and clicked on the article only to find that, in fact, no, he is still with us, thankfully. Right, and yes, so they, why do they do that? It is mostly, right, because getting people to click on and load your page is the thing that generates ad revenue. Yep, that is the number one reason. Yeah.
And on back of that, what you guys were just talking about, how about like they have a recipe and you have to wait a half hour to get it? The students don't want the recipe.
Yes.
How do they get paid?
Yes.
How do you wait? Who pays these people?
This is a fascinating question. So the question was about the trope of like the recipe blog where, you click to get the recipe and first you have to read their entire life story before you get the actual recipe. Really good question. So part of how Google and other search algorithms work is that it pays attention to how much time people spend on a site. So if people search for lasagna and then they click on your lasagna recipe and then they spend 45 minutes on your page, that ranks really well with Google. Versus if you click on the lasagna recipe and you spend 2 minutes and you print it out and then you're done, right? So on blogs like that, where it's like an individual creator where they are, they've monetized their blog, they show up higher in search results if they can get people to spend more time on the page. Yep, that's the reason. Where does the money come from is a great question. So if they have ads on their page, they're getting paid basically to have ads, right? They're getting paid probably not directly by those businesses, but potentially by, like through a third party like website or web ad hosting service. It's also, even some of those sites that don't directly have ads, it still benefits them to show up higher in the search results if they then do things like, join my cooking classes that are, only $400 for a cooking class, right? If you can get people to spend more time on your site, that brings you up higher in the Google search results. It drives more traffic to your site, and then you start to get more people willing to buy whatever it is that you're selling. Yeah. So.
Are they also grabbing your email or your contact information to put you on like a mailing?
Yeah. So the question was, are they also potentially getting your email or your contact information to put you on a mailing list? They should not be able to get that without your consent, right? They shouldn't get it just from like you were on this web page to be able to send you emails directly. But you might start getting ads for their content more. And yes, that can also be a goal is, to pop up, sign up for my newsletter. And so if you then, yes, give them your email address, then now they have another way to get content in front of you and potentially to get you spending more time on their site. I know we're at or after time, and I think there's at least one question from online. Yeah.
Yeah, one question online is asking if you can repeat the fact-checking sites.
Yes, let me go back to those slides. Yeah, so the ones that I highly recommend are PolitiFact, RumorGuard, and Snopes. All good resources, all with slightly different sort of takes on how they approach this, but definitely good to check out. All right, I know we are at time, so the thing I wanted to do real quick is, especially for the folks who are online, if you would like a copy of the slides from this evening, if you're online and you have your smartphone handy, you can scan that QR code and that will take you to a form to fill it out. If you're here in person, I also have paper forms that you can fill out if that's easier. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, good. Yes, yeah, okay. It is back there. Yes, I'll go grab them in a second. But also, you all did a great job. Good discussion, good idea generation. So thank you for coming.
Just to wrap up today, I wanted to say thank you again for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed the program. A recording of this lecture will be made available on our YouTube channel sometime this month. And please also consider supporting the Levy Senior Center Foundation with a donation today. Your generous donations help us to continue to create opportunities to serve the older adults in our community. And thank you again, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.